Imagine the following. It's easy if you try. A sleek, towering rocket stands on the launch pad, a symbol of human ambition, and the countdown reaches zero. A deafening roar fills the air, flames engulf the base, and the machine surges skyward, carving a path toward the heavens. Engineers watch from the control room, tracking every detail, with their minds calculating 1,000 variables at once. Then, without warning, a disaster strikes. The sky erupts in fire. The vehicle disintegrates in a bright flash, debris scattering into the atmosphere. Silence falls over the room, and there is no celebration, no victory. But was this a failure? Or was it the necessary price of progress? Such was the fate of Starship 8, SpaceX's most recent rocket to explode. And if you want to keep up with the most important developments in spaceflight, then be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. Because this explosion isn't about one rocket. It is about whether we still have the courage to take risks or if we've become too afraid to fail. Hello, I'm Gene with the Space Guild, and today we'll be talking about SpaceX's latest Starship test flight, which ended in a dramatic explosion. Some see it as a humiliating setback, proof that the company is moving recklessly and chasing an impossible dream with no regard for safety, while others recognize it as part of a long and necessary process, one that every great technological leap in history has required. This debate is not about one vehicle, one company, or even one mission. It is about the future of exploration itself. Have we grown too cautious to advance, or can we still endure failure on the way to greatness? So here's what happened. Starship lifted off from SpaceX's Starbase facility. It was the most powerful rocket ever built, roaring to life as it cleared the launch tower. And for a brief moment, everything looked flawless. The engines fired with controlled fury, sending the colossal vehicle higher into the sky, a testament to human engineering. This was the third integrated flight test of Starship, designed to push the limits of what's possible in rocketry. And, unlike its predecessors, it successfully passed critical early benchmarks, demonstrating significant progress. But then came the anomaly. As Starship approached stage separation, something went wrong. The vehicle experienced a failure in the ascent phase, triggering an automated flight termination system, and in an instant, the mission was lost. The explosion sent debris streaking through the sky, a fiery reminder of the unforgiving nature of spaceflight. SpaceX later confirmed that data collection was the main priority, and in that regard, the test was still a success, because they had learned what worked, and more importantly, what didn't. Now, to those unfamiliar with SpaceX's philosophy, the explosion seemed like a disaster. But to those who understand engineering and aerospace history, it was another step forward. SpaceX does not fear failure. The company embraces it as an essential part of innovation, applying lessons from each test to refine and to improve. This approach is what makes Starship unique, an experimental program willing to risk everything in pursuit of something greater. However, the media wasted no time in declaring the explosion a failure. Headlines painted it as a setback, a sign that SpaceX's ambitions had outpaced reality, and critics called it reckless, arguing that the company's aggressive testing approaches endanger not only its own projects, but the broader space industry. And some questioned whether SpaceX should be allowed to continue pushing forward at this pace, suggesting that regulatory agencies need to step in and enforce stricter oversight. In their eyes, failure is unacceptable, and every launch must be perfect, or the entire program is flawed. But those who understand the nature of innovation saw the event differently. Engineers and spaceflight enthusiasts recognized that this was not a disaster, it was progress in real time. SpaceX operates on an iterative design philosophy: test, fail, refine, and repeat. This is how the company has always worked. Every major advancement, from reusable rocket boosters to rapid turnaround launches, was built on a foundation of trial and error. And those who expect perfection from experimental rockets misunderstand how breakthroughs happen. And beyond technical circles, the explosion revealed a cultural divide. There are those who see risk as a necessary cost of discovery, and those who believe that failure is a sign of incompetence. The Apollo program faced similar scrutiny after early failures, yet NASA persevered. And if today's society cannot accept failure as part of the process, then space exploration itself is in danger. Because without risk, there is no reward, and without failure, there is no success. Throughout history, every significant leap forward in technology has come at a cost. The Wright brothers crashed before they flew, Robert Goddard's early rockets exploded more often than they succeeded, and the Apollo program suffered tragic setbacks, including the deaths of 3 astronauts in the Apollo 1 fire. Yet each of these failures was met not with surrender, but with resolve. The engineers of the past understood that progress requires risk, and without the willingness to push limits, nothing new can be achieved. But today, that spirit is under threat. Bureaucracy and risk aversion have slowed advancements across nearly every industry, and modern institutions demand safety above all else, hesitant to allow even the smallest failure. But space travel has never been safe. It has always required pushing beyond the limits of what is known, accepting setbacks as part of the journey. And the question is whether we, as a civilization, still have the stomach for it. SpaceX represents a return to the older way of thinking, a willingness to take calculated risks, fail fast, and improve rapidly. This approach is at odds with the risk averse culture of government space agencies, which favor slow, methodical progress over rapid iteration. But if humanity is to become a spacefaring civilization, then the willingness to accept failure must outweigh the desire for absolute certainty. If we demand perfection before action, then we will never leave Earth. The implications of this explosion extend far beyond SpaceX. NASA has placed its future lunar ambitions on Starship, relying on it as the landing vehicle for the Artemis program. And if regulators decide to slow SpaceX down, then the entire timeline for returning humans to the moon could be jeopardized. And every additional layer of oversight, every imposed delay, increases the risk that Artemis will face the same fate as the Constellation program, a grand vision strangled by bureaucracy before it could succeed. The question is not whether Starship will eventually work. It will. The question is whether it will be allowed to. Because beyond Artemis, the explosion sends ripples throughout the entire commercial space sector. Other companies are watching closely, gauging how much risk the government is willing to tolerate. And if every failure results in heavier regulation, then the incentive to innovate diminishes. A cautious approach might feel prudent, but it comes at a cost: stagnation. And a world in which no one is allowed to fail is a world in which no one will achieve anything grand. SpaceX will rebuild. They will study the data, adjust the design, and launch again. But this moment is a test, not just for the company, but for the world. Will we accept that exploration requires failure? Or will we allow fear to dictate the limits of human ambition? The answer will determine whether we remain an earthbound species or take our first real steps toward becoming something greater. But for now, SpaceX will not be deterred by the explosion of Starship 8. The engineers will analyze every data point, modify the design, and push forward. This is how progress is made, not through endless deliberation, but through action, iteration, and refinement. The explosion was not the end of Starship. It was another necessary step toward making it stronger. Those who see failure as defeat misunderstand how great achievements are built. Every successful system in history, from aviation to computing to rocketry itself, was shaped through trial and error. The real threat to space exploration is not a single rocket failing. It is a culture that fears failure more than stagnation. And if we hesitate, if we demand perfection before action, then we will doom ourselves to an age of decline. The greatest risk is not in launching a rocket that explodes, it is allowing the fear of failure to keep us from launching at all. SpaceX will try again, they will fail again, and eventually they will succeed, because that is the nature of exploration. That is how frontiers are conquered. The only question is whether we, as a civilization, are still willing to take that leap. And if you want to witness history as it happens, then subscribe to this channel, because the future is being built, and you won't want to miss it. With Elenarda, I'm Gene Botkin. End transmission.